Hey guys, if you're watching this, it's Thursday. I hope you're having a good day. Fed Chair Powell comments coming out just last week on Friday. This week is all about big tech earnings season here. We've got a lot of big companies reporting. And then we're going to spend some time on our question of the week, all about some local scams that are out there and how you can kind of protect yourself as it is, I believe, cybersecurity or some sort of national cybersecurity month, something like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. My name is Brandon Steele, financial advisor with Mainsail Financial Group here in Bellevue. And our goal every week is just to bring you the market updates, hopefully weed out some of the noise and really bring you the stuff that matters or that you can actually use to incorporate into your strategies. I have to do this a little bit ahead of schedule here this week, so thanks for bearing with us. We'll still release it on Thursday, but I'm actually out of town with limited access, going to Hawaii for kind of a long weekend for a wedding. So really looking forward to some sun, and I think my friend is very excited to finally get this going. He's been delayed and delayed because of COVID, so happy to see this finally happen. So anyways, we can try to jump into things. Last Friday, we had Fed Chair Powell commenting. And truth is, there wasn't really anything new. I don't know that I need to spend a whole lot of time here. I wanted to mention it because I talked about it last week. But the truth is, there wasn't anything exciting or anything new that came out of the conference. So I think that we are gearing up for some November tapering, and we will see what he has to say in a few weeks, but nothing new or exciting that came out of it on Friday specifically. Fast forward to this week. On Tuesday, we had consumer confidence numbers come out. Came out at 113.8, which is actually quite a bit higher than expected, and maybe a bit surprising given kind of what we've seen lately. I think maybe the tick up has to do with COVID and the Delta variant kind of slowing down here recently. So that may have a big impact on why we saw that tick up a bit. But really the story this week is all about big tech. So Tesla was up huge early on this week, I think up like 12% on Monday. Facebook was down really big on earnings data. We've got Google, we've got Microsoft, we've got Apple. I mean, all these big tech, trillion-dollar companies are reporting here this week. And so it has caused a lot of ups and downs. Really, it's interesting. I know for those who follow us know this from last earnings season as well. Even with these giant tech firms reporting earnings and having these giant swings up, down, whatever the case may be, the truth is that the broader index, the S&P, the Dow, the NASDAQ, have not really changed a whole lot so far this week. So interesting to see what happens as the week carries on. It's only Wednesday here as I'm talking, so there could still be a lot of change. But it's interesting because these companies have such big weights in these indices, and even with these interesting earnings reports and seasons, it hasn't impacted the actual index on that day specifically. So important to watch, but obviously a lot of us have a lot of may have a lot of holdings in these big companies, especially as they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger over the years. So probably a lot hinging on this week for a lot of investors. So definitely important to watch. And I think we have more kind of carrying into next week as well. We've got Apple on Thursday. I mean, it's just the heavy hitters all reporting here over the next couple of weeks. So definitely worth keeping an eye on. Next week, we'll have quite a bit to touch on. So again, because I am recording this a little bit early, next week I'm going to be touching on the GDP numbers for Thursday. And it will be very interesting to watch what comes out here. With the huge growth we were all hoping to see and expected, really, it doesn't look like that may be the case. There's much less expectations than we had hoped as around GDP. And in fact, those expectations are only near about 2.8% GDP increase for last quarter. So much less than I think we were all hoping to see, much less than we were all expecting to see. And I've seen that number kind of keep crawling back. Now, this close to it, that's probably where the expectations will lie. So we'll see where the numbers come out on Thursday, but hopefully it's a surprise. Who knows? Let's hope that happens. We also have income and spending plus inflation and jobs numbers all next week. So next week, we're going to spend a lot of time. We're going to break down all of this and really dig in. That's going to be the most, the most data-filled week that we've probably had on our weekly updates. Plus, we'll kind of break down some of the big tech earnings. So definitely join us next Thursday at 3. And with these jobs numbers, it will be very interesting to see what happens because last month, the jobs numbers were really not strong. And I'm wondering if anybody, I saw something the other day that had suggested a giant number of people had left their jobs because of vaccine requirements. And I'm just curious if anybody happens to have that data. The number that I heard seems so large that I had a hard time believing it. So I'm just curious if anybody happens to have that or have somewhere I can find that. I think it'd be very interesting to see if you can send it over or, maybe comment below. Love to see what you're able to find there. But if it's anywhere near the actual numbers, that had a huge impact on the jobs data, might have had a huge impact on the jobs data last month and potentially the impact on the jobs data coming up here. So hopefully we see a giant jump as we get some of that October data, jobs data. But if anybody has this information, I'd love to see that because that may factor in a little bit too. So so interesting times for sure. Anyways, we'll jump into our question of the week. This week, we're talking a lot about some scams and ways to maybe keep an eye out for some of these things because they are everywhere lately. In our office, just over the last, 2 or 3 months or so, we've had clients, we've had, advisors, we've had my partner Adam's had some things come through. I mean, there's been scam after scam lately, and it is, it's tough because a lot of people do fall for them and they are getting really, really good at disguising these. So we wanted to make sure to touch on it. Basically, what I'll share is that I'm seeing a lot of these out there. A lot of them are from the IRS lately, claiming that maybe you received some extra stimulus payment or you owe some money in taxes or whatever the case may be. That's one of the top ones I've seen. There's also one that's been out there for a while where they claim that maybe your child or grandchild or whatever it may be at the border. And basically you have to send money to release them. There's just all these different things. And so the key, I think, is that whenever you see something like this come through, there's always a couple pieces to this. They're always, surprisingly, asking you to either click something or send something, send them money, whatever it may be, and with urgency. So just keep that in mind when you run into these things. I mean, generally, obviously the IRS wants their money and wants it quick. But generally, when they send something, it's not like you've got to pay tomorrow type of situation. So, just kind of take that with a grain of salt if you see something that requires this huge sense of urgency. And the biggest thing that I would say is when you look at an email, when you look at the from field there, a lot of times they'll disguise these emails. So it may say IRS, but if you either click or hover over it, or you have it open on a web browser where it actually spells out the actual domain and all that it's coming from, a lot of times that's where you can pick up on a lot of this stuff right out of the gate. It may say IRS in the tagline or whatever it might be, but if you look a little further into it, it might, maybe it spells, maybe the I is actually a 1, for instance, on their domain, or it's just a bunch of numbers in this really random email address that it's actually coming from. So pay attention to that. A lot of times they'll change the spelling maybe on their domain just slightly, but clearly if you look into it, if you actually read it, it is not who they say they are. So that's a good way to pay attention to that. And then also, just any spelling or grammar issues within the body of the email. A lot of times they'll do a good job of picking up on these logos, and so you may not be able to tell at first glance, but if you read carefully the body of that email, it might be very clear that that it was not spelled out quite right or whatever the case may be. So I hope that helps. We're seeing these pick up like crazy lately. So wanted to make sure to touch on it here this week. Let us know. I actually posted a poll on LinkedIn. So if you don't mind, go find that. Let us know what you want us to cover next week. Love to try and address some of the things top of your mind in our question of the week here each week. Otherwise, we'll see you next Thursday at 3 p.m. and we will have a lot to cover. So see you next week.